Hey guys, after getting stuck in his favorite game, he had to save the Empress of the world. But before continuing, don't forget to like. The story begins in a different way, in the ruins of the Temple of Themis, the goddess of life. In this place, a liquid being emerges, destroying the ground around it. He is the guardian boss of the temple ruins. In front of this immense monster stands our protagonist, known in the game as Dead Beast Boxing Gym, who is searching for new members for his team. In a combat stance, our hero prepares to face the Guardian, who, furious, begins to grow larger, concentrating his powerful energy to attack the small warrior. Anticipating what is to come, he holds his shield, absorbing the pressure of the intense water as the environment around him disintegrates with the impact. Propelled upward, the warrior, unharmed, prepares for a counterattack. With his flaming sword, he swiftly strikes the upper part of the monster, invoking his blazing explosive slash. As soon as he hits the ground, the liquid guardian explodes in half. The brave warrior sheathes his sword as the monster completely disintegrates, leaving only debris behind. The game system notifies and congratulates the warrior, announcing that Dead Beast Boxing Gym is recruiting new members. He has just defeated the Tide of Sorrow, a legendary boss, and his reward is the Eternal Tear of Themis. His achievement is announced on the World Channel. From the rubble, energy surrounds the protagonist as he levels up. This energy gathers in his hand, forming a strange and rare tear-shaped object, leaving the boy confused. Activating his system and researching the item, he discovers it is the Eternal Tear of Themis, a legendary artifact that reduces the cooldown of his healing abilities, halves the cost of those abilities, and increases their effects by 200%. The warrior then realizes his online class is almost over. He decides to store the legendary item in his gold mining cart, or profit cart. In real life, we see the student disconnect and, tired, remove his virtual reality glasses. However, his expression turns serious, and around him, his classmates feel the pressure that intimidates them, commenting that this bastard completed a legendary mission that should have been done in a team in the ancient ruins of Themis. While packing his backpack, the protagonist, irritated, realizes once again that he is being isolated. His classmates comment that, whether in any game or real life, he is a real monster. As he leaves, he suddenly bumps into a girl. She apologizes and asks if he is Jin-san. Confused, the boy responds that yes, he is Jin. The nervous young girl introduces herself as Sujin and reveals that she has just transferred to the school. She saw the protagonist feeding stray cats and, as she loves cats, asks if he can wait for her at the school entrance so they can feed the kittens together. The protagonist, Jin, walks in silence and seriously, but soon as he approaches the girl, he nervously exclaims that he would love to accompany her. The girl beams with joy at his response. Jin introduces himself as a simple high school student and reveals that his family runs a martial arts gym called Dead Beast, but that it will soon close down. As they walk together, happy, Jin shares that he has always had a talent for fighting since he was young. Unfortunately, these skills attract problematic people. Nearby, a bully and his cronies are attacking someone. Jin recognizes one of the victims as a former member of the Sanda team, who was expelled for being a troublemaker. The beaten-up young man sees Jin and shouts to his boss, accusing him of being responsible for his situation. The thug, irritated, asks if Jin was the one who attacked his subordinates, and he confirms. Enraged, the bully advances to attack him with a punch, but Jin, with a serious expression, easily dodges. Then, he jumps and, raising his knee, performs his 9th stance of the Dead Beast technique, called the Wild Rhinoceros Knee. striking the brute's face. The impact causes the man to crash against the wall and collapse on the ground. This scene impresses the other attackers and leaves the girl stunned. Jin gives a slight smile, but soon notices the fear in her expression, as she cannot believe he is really a delinquent, and then she runs away crying. Jin tries to get her attention, asking her to wait so he can explain. Trembling, he confesses that when threatened, his body instinctively reacts with the most powerful counterattack. Tired of the situation, he reflects that he no longer wants to use the dead beast technique. Later, at the dead beast boxing gym, someone announces his arrival. It's Jin, who, bored, greets his father. The man, trying to catch him off guard, attacks with a sword, but Jin, grabbing his neck, says it's over. However, he lets go and hears his father's congratulations for properly using the bear's tombstone attack. As he climbs the stairs, Jin laments that he cannot escape his fate of inheriting the dead beast technique, since, even in video games, he is forced to play as a warrior to promote the family gym. At that moment, his father calls him a swear word, useless, and angrily complains that even though he's promoting the gym in the game, no one has shown up. Sad, the boy reflects that no one respects him because they never asked what he truly desires. Inside the game, we see the beautiful tavern keeper Jessin, a red-skinned night elf. Before her, Jin reveals his situation, where everyone sees him as a delinquent. Moreover, being an only child, he feels obligated to learn a technique to take over the gym. Angrily, he vents that, even in this world, he is forced to be a character he does not want to be. The elf, touching his shoulder, tells him that the Dead Beast boxing gym is recruiting new members and encourages him to have courage and, at least for a moment, follow what his heart truly desires. The boy looks at the elf fondly, but suddenly a red window appears, irritating him. It's an emergency notice informing that all accounts will be blocked at midnight and that the game Throne of Sword and Fire will be shut down. The players, surprised and angry, can't understand the reason for this sudden suspension, realizing that time is running out. The knight, worried, wonders if the data of the elf, who had just given him the right answer, will also be erased. In real life, it's already night, and Jin, thoughtful, can't sleep, feeling the pressure of time, knowing that there are only 2 minutes left before the servers close, and that he may never see her again. Remembering the last moment when the tavern keeper advised him to be brave and follow his heart, even if only for an instant, Jin smiles. With 1 minute remaining until the server shut down, he starts the game Throne of Sword and Fire. The system prompts him to choose his species among the options: undead, elf, human, and ogre. Then, it asks him to select a class between warrior, mage, assassin, hunter, and priest. He opts for human and chooses the priest class, confirming his selection and creating his character. Thus, he is about to begin his journey in search of the sword and fire. In the real world, the clock strikes midnight, but in the game, a player rises confused, hearing another ask for forgiveness from his father. Jin, thinking they are attacking his head, discovers it is a priestess who tells him that with holy water, she will purify his body. Without hesitation, he grabs the priestess's arm while she continues to pray and instinctively performs the 5th stance of the Dead Beast Strike technique, the Fierce Tiger Aerial Maneuver. The priestess screams as she is hit and falls into the holy water, which overflows. He realizes she is semi-conscious, but she quickly gets up and, returning to prayer, asks if he swears to dedicate his life to the sacred light and protect those who suffer. Nervous, the protagonist affirms that he swears. The doors then open, and Jin steps out into the sun, feeling the peace of the fresh air. However, a new window appears informing that only 1 minute remains until midnight. He knows his journey as a priest is about to end and, with no alternatives, lifts his head to admire, at least one last time, the beautiful blue sky. However, half an hour passes, and with his eyes red from staring, Jin realizes that everything should have already ended. He wonders if there was a delay, and upon looking around, notices that the area, which should be full of players, is deserted. Excited, he believes it's a system error and decides to make the most of the remaining time to play. He then accesses his novice mission, which informs him that, as a priest of the Temple of Sacred Light, he must travel to the Empire of Caesar and bless the new Empress, her Diana the First. The young man knows he needs to do something first. Heading to the Prophet Cart access point, or Goldmine Cart, he enters his password and withdraws the eternal tear of Themis from the machine. Holding the legendary item, he feels ready to fulfill his dream of becoming a priest. Jin quickly travels from the Temple of Sacred Light to Gozo, the capital of the Empire of Caesar. Upon arrival, someone exclaims, "Long live the Empire of Caesar and Empress her Diana the First." The beautiful sovereign bows her head as the crown is placed upon her, exalting her name. The warrior Empress stands out with an impressive presence, receiving applause and acclaim from the entire city. However, the protagonist recalls the mission instructions, which warned of an unknown spell about to strike the place, resulting in the death of the new Empress and the destruction of the Empire of Caesar. Knowing that his task as a priest is to save 10 wounded people, he watches the crowd panic as a bright light appears. Jin realizes the attack has begun when he sees a fireball, actually several glowing rocks, destroying everything around him. The system warns that he must follow the instructions and run to the green zone to avoid the meteors, successfully activating the mission. Amid the attack, a knight urges the Empress to flee, but she cannot understand where the magical defense unit is. She then orders the cavalry of the Furious Lions to protect the Empire. At that moment, a nearby girl begins to cry uncontrollably. The Empress, upon seeing her, knows she must act. Leaping, to the knight's dismay, she quickly moves to bring the child to safety. When she stops, however, she realizes everything is ablaze. Looking around, she notices that from a well, Jin, the curious protagonist, is peeking at the situation. With no other option, the woman tosses the girl to Jin and asks him to take care of her. With no choice, he finds himself forced to take the child. Amid the flames, the Empress smiles, but is hit by a powerful explosion that destroys everything around her. Jin, covered by the shockwave, hears the girl's terrified screams and wonders if this is just an event triggered by the mission. As the debris settles, the knight rushes toward the Empress, calling out for her. Helplessly, he sees the sovereign, gravely wounded, trapped under large stones. Empress, her Diana. I has only 11 life points left. Although he knows this is all part of the mission, Jin feels deep sadness. He curses himself for being only a level 1 priest with beginner healing skills, not understanding what a novice can do. He repeatedly expresses his frustration at not being able to act, even though he is a priest. Remembering the Empress's sacrifice, who risked her life to save others, he resolves to give his all to heal her wounds. Jin calls upon the goddess Terra of Sacred Light, pleading for her divine power to save this mortal. As he uses the healing power, a green aura surrounds the Empress, but he can only restore 1 life point. The system reports the result, adding that she is still immobilized and suffering from severe internal injuries. Disappointed, the young priest knows that even with the eternal tear, he cannot do more than that. However, he does not give up. With fervor, he prays again to the goddess and uses his healing. He calls upon her 1, 2, 3 times, impressing the knight with his determination. Exhausted, Jin knows that as soon as he stops healing, the Empress's life will start to decline again. However, someone thanks him. It is the knight who expresses his gratitude, praising Jin's talent for being able to use healing multiple times despite being only an Iron Cross priest. However, he comments that he is merely doing his job, and immediately the knight, enraged, attacks him alone. But Jin-san, very serious, manages to stop the attack, and the knight cannot believe that a novice priest could stop his instant stab. With a deadly look, the protagonist asks who he is and what he just did, but removing his mask, the knight exclaims that he is the third phase of the blood moon, named San, and that he specializes in deception and assassination. Performing flips, he boasts of having eliminated more than 200 people, including 6 emperors, 122 nobles, and 44 generals. With a murderous gaze, he declares that his success rate is 100%. The protagonist recalls that this is a group of red night elves who simulate the phases of the moon and are the strongest organization in Pangaea, costing a fortune to hire. Worried, the young man knows that they can defeat hero-level characters. The Machiavellian elf reminds him that Caesar's empire caused the hatred of other species by oppressing them, and now the empire is being destroyed by the celestial fire, consuming the capital. Like a demon, he exclaims that he will be responsible for killing the new empress, but to his surprise, the protagonist interrupts him, asking if he's finished speaking because he needs to continue healing the girl, or her health will keep dropping. The assassin does not understand how a mere priest dares to speak like that, and, furious, attacks him for the offense. However, his quick attack does not hit the target, as Jin-san, serious, uses the 10th stance of the dead beast strike technique, the fast bull punch, hitting the elf so hard that it knocks him unconscious, leaving him on his knees on the ground. The protagonist warns that he had already told him not to interrupt his healing. As time passes, the priest continues to heal the empress until he completely restores her life. But she remains immobilized with internal injuries. Thoughtful, Jin-san realizes that with his level, he can only heal life. Unable to stop the constant internal damage, he needs to level up to learn true healing. Suddenly, he notices that he has just used his dead beast strike technique inside the game, and also realizes that the member of the Blood Moon has stats far superior to his own. At this moment, he notices something strange. The name bars of the Empress and the elf have disappeared. Surprised, he doesn't understand why they no longer have NPC tags. Even so, he quickly lifts the Empress and thinks of a way to complete the mission, to level up and learn the healing ability. When the Empress finally wakes up, she realizes she is being held by the waist. Annoyed, she screams at him to get his dirty hands off her and, with great strength, strikes him. The priest tries to calm her down, but the sovereign approaches, furious, and shouts that he should die for being a sycophant of the Temple of the Sacred Light. The Empress tries to attack him again, but Jin-san dominates her using the 3rd stance of the Dead Beast strike technique, the Serpent's Bind. Then he asks the Empress if she will finally listen to him. Confused, the woman doesn't understand how a mere priest managed to stop her. Meanwhile, in another part of the sacred capital of Goza, on the 18th floor of the royal prison, unknown footsteps are heard. Someone asks who it is, but screams of pain soon echo as many knights are killed. The one responsible, hooded, just observes. He opens a cell and comments that he wants to see in action the techniques of the famous torturer, who was imprisoned for 30 years. This prisoner is one of the vanguardists of the Union of the Fierce Oath, named Ka El-Sad, the torturer, who, now free, is eager to kill. Back to the scene with the Empress. Tired of fighting, she agrees to listen to the priest's explanation. He releases her and gently hands her crown. Now calmer, the Empress sits and asks him to begin. Jin-san tells his entire story, from the moment he became a priest to the moment he defeated the Blood Moon Elf. Impatient, the Empress interrupts him, saying that the Temple of the Sacred Light and the Empire are on bad terms, and doesn't understand how an apprentice managed to defeat a Blood Moon assassin. She asks if he really expects her to believe that story. Thoughtful, the protagonist responds that, in truth, he doesn't expect anything. At that moment, the sovereign's sword points at him. She threatens him, demanding a more convincing story, or he will be imprisoned. Jin-san, sighing, thinks a little more, but prefers to finish the mission so he can look for his dear and voluptuous elf, Jin. As he walks away, he comments that it doesn't matter if she believes it or not, as he has other things to do. Disconcerted, the Empress yells at the foolish priest that he did not have permission to leave. Meanwhile, in the distance, a sudden event unfolds. The monster, Verd Els, like an unstoppable force, devastates the Empire and its knights in seconds. With a murderous gaze, he pursues all the warriors, killing them mercilessly. Jin-san cannot understand how this is possible, as all of Caesar's family's attributes should be superior, regardless of gender. During the battle, the Empress screams, and the two, the executioner and the Empress, prepare for a confrontation of devastating attacks. However, the protagonist warns her that if she gets hit, she won't survive. The beast's giant hammer quickly advances, and the girl realizes that the power of the attack could completely destroy her, so she takes a defensive stance. However, the impact of the attack sends her flying through the air, causing her to crash violently to the ground, devastating everything behind Jin-san. Worried, the young man observes the little life left in the imposing warrior, as well as the increasing internal damage. As he approaches to heal her, the voluptuous woman rises and stops him, stating that this is a duel between warriors, and that, as a descendant of Caesar, she will not allow a priest of the temple to interfere in her moment. Wounded, she insists that the protagonist step back, as she had already said. The monster, disdainful, questions if there is no one else from the Caesar family, to the point of placing a child as empress. Hearing this, the warrior is filled with indignation and advances, as the monster has tainted her lineage's name. The beast attacks again, considering her stubborn. The giant hammer strikes the sovereign's body, sending her flying along with her legendary sword, resulting in a devastating explosion. Finally, the Empress is defeated, her life nearly depleted and bleeding slowly. Jin, cursing the situation, runs to the Empress and asks why an NPC is causing so much trouble. Trembling, the sovereign pleads with the priest to help her find her sword. Furious, Jin-san yells that she is crazy, as it is impossible to fight in her condition. However, even on the verge of death, the warrior insists that a member of the royal family never gives up. These words make the protagonist recall the teachings of his father and master. As long as there is breath, a user of the beast strike technique must persevere. In the present, a step echoes. It's the executioner, who cannot believe that a mere priest has the audacity to heal the Empress before him. Jin-san declares that the monster has already won and that, as a free beast, it should simply leave. However, the creature becomes enraged, wanting to tear off the sovereign's head and display it at the city's entrance as revenge for his species being humiliated 44 years ago. Ignoring the warning, Jin continues healing the Empress. The executioner approaches, and unleashes a powerful attack that destroys and sets the place on fire. After the attack, the beast rejoices, believing he has killed everyone, but he soon notices something. Upon seeing that the princess is still alive, asking who he is, Jin-san, with one hand, manages to stop the destructive blow, asking the monster to let him finish healing the woman. The beast, incredulous, prepares to attack again, as it considers Jin too dangerous to live. It knows it must finish him at all costs. With this, it strikes its most powerful blow, but Jin quickly ducks and jumps high, dodging the devastating attack. Moving swiftly toward the beast's weapon, which barely notices his presence, he uses the fourth stance of the dead beast strike technique. Leaping with force, he destroys the weapon, and the monster, realizing what's coming, watches the protagonist advance like an unstoppable force. With a swift impact, he delivers a powerful kangaroo kick, destroying the beast's teeth, which falls defeated and passes out. The creature is about to fall on the Empress, but Jin-san catches her with one hand. The boy, now serious, doesn't understand how it's possible to use his dead beast strike technique in that game. He screams and cries in frustration, as all he wants is to be a priest. But, remembering to heal the warrior, he prays to restore her life. He continues healing tirelessly, and the woman's health slowly increases, point by point, until the system informs him that she is no longer in danger of death. Meanwhile, Jin doesn't understand why he feels more exhausted when healing than when fighting. He considers using another stance. Sitting down, he realizes that while chanting the prayer, he can heal her in this position. Reciting the prayer, he brings his hand closer and heals her. And for the first time, the warrior's health increases by 2 points at once. Noticing this improvement, he begins to understand what's happening. Thus, he approaches the area of the most severe wound, causing the healing to increase even more. Now, the protagonist fully understands that to heal faster, he must place his hand directly over the wound. Removing the girl's cloak, he places his hand on her chest, where the most severe wound is. By doing so, the healing increases by 10 points at once, and the boy is delighted with the efficiency. He continues healing without stopping as the Empress begins to regain consciousness. As soon as she wakes up, she feels embarrassed and screams that he is there again, calling him a perverted priest with disdain. Attempting to strike him, the woman is shocked to see that the boy, exhausted from using so much healing, can barely hold her. Meanwhile, horses approach, and the boy, still with his hand on the girl's chest, says that she's not fully healed yet. But the horsemen are getting closer, and soon they arrive, exclaiming that they will not let him harm Her Majesty. Jin-san recognizes who they are, and they are surrounded by a legion of soldiers. They threaten him, but Jin-san hears someone approaching. It's a knight with sky-blue hair draped in gold, who asks if he wants his hand cut off or to be killed quickly. Upon seeing the knight, the Empress is overjoyed and calls him Chelton. Finishing his attack, he elegantly sheaths his weapon, while a large cut appears on the ground. However, behind the confident sky-haired knight, the guards don't understand if the attack failed since the target is still alive. The Empire's marshal, upon realizing this, is confused, as he didn't see anyone dodge. In front of him is our dear and foolish protagonist, pretending not to understand what happened. The knight is completely shocked, unable to believe what he sees, and upon looking at the young man, he knows that he is just a low-level priest. However, Jin-sang, sweating, clarifies that it wasn't as easy to dodge as they think. If he hadn't known he was going to be attacked, he probably would have been hit head-on. Upon seeing the Golden Knight, he doesn't even want to imagine what this man is capable of. Being the strongest in the empire, the sovereign, now calmer, sighs and tells Chelton that the protagonist saved her life, so he should let him go. The priest agrees and comments that he won't trouble the Duke since he needs to leave. While wishing much happiness to the princess, the young man tries to quickly pass by the knight. But suddenly, a spear strikes the ground, blocking his way. Jin Song realizes it was thrown by other knights, and, not knowing what to do, can only look in frustration at his bad luck. Feeling a great weight, the wicked knight informs him that not even the Master of the Dawn, the Pope of the Sacred Light Temple, would have been able to dodge his sword. Finally, incredulous that a mere priest could perform such a feat, he asks who the protagonist really is. Thoughtful, Jin Sang responds that he's just an 18-year-old teenager who had a tough childhood. In a flashback, we see someone walking through the continuously falling snow, while people around observe something surprising. We see the protagonist's father asking if he wants to be a coward or a brave man. Without hesitation, the young man shouts that he wants to be very brave, and then we see the father on top of a truck. Ahead is the poor and strong Jin Sang, using all his strength to push the massive vehicle. Excited, the father says he needs to push another 2 kilometers to earn a plate of food, while the driver warns that he has already called for a tow, and the passengers watch, thinking it's child abuse. They want someone to save the boy, but the old man just watches his son struggle with all his might. In the present, the young man recounts that his dream was to be a doctor and save lives, but that wasn't possible because his father was a martial arts fanatic. Remembering his situation, he exclaims that he was forced to undergo hellish training, and that's why he became so strong. Even so, the knight doesn't believe him and prepares another powerful attack, as he doesn't trust the young man's words. Jin Sang, quickly, confused, asks if the knight has no warrior's honor, while the voluptuous sovereign shouts for Chelton to stop immediately. However, that insane knight is already fed up with that monkey who only likes to dodge, and upon preparing another massive attack, causes an explosion. Approaching his target, he activates his aerial combat skill called the Great Rose Funeral. Watching the countless slashes approaching, the determined protagonist dodged dozens of them, exclaiming for his opponent to stop with that. Passing through the rain of deadly blows, he warned the enemy that he was about to lose his patience. It was then that the priest laughed out loud, claiming that the technique used was even weaker than the previous flowery strike. Despite this, the sky-haired knight gave a slight smile upon seeing a cut form on the protagonist's body, who felt an intense pain from the several blades that struck him. Confused and enduring the suffering, he couldn't comprehend how it had happened. In front of him, the Golden Knight of Pisces observed that they seemed to ignore the origin of his sword. Immediately, Jin Sang consulted the system and discovered that the petal sword was an epic level 180 weapon, capable of tripling attack speed, increasing critical damage, and featuring the passive ability Wind Reaper. It was said that this sword had been a gift forged by King Emerald, sovereign of the elves, using his own flesh to celebrate the founding of the Caesar Empire. Additionally, the weapon was a conscious plant, endowed with extremely powerful wood magic, but its handle had thorns that caused intense pain to the bearer. Fascinated by the sword, the protagonist didn't imagine that the Golden Knight endured so much pain while wielding it. He knew he needed to heal quickly, but upon jumping and breaking the ground, he saw the Golden Knight approaching rapidly and delivering a blow that struck his face, almost causing him to faint. At that moment, his heart began to tremble like an earthquake, activating Jin Sang's beast mode and enraged, he raised his hand to use the 7th stance of the dead beast strike technique. He screamed and unleashed the powerful, open grip of the ferocious wolf, advancing toward the nervous blue-haired knight. Meanwhile, the princess, already irritated by being ignored, decided to intervene and shouted that she would cut them both in half if they didn't stop. Noticing the princess's presence, the two knights paused and looked at her, but the protagonist, in desperation, yelled that he couldn't stop his fight and cursed himself. In the heat of the moment, he ended up kissing Chelton, who was shocked. The royal guards watched the scene, surprised, while Jin Sang and the blue-haired knight were completely stunned. Diana, the princess, saw everything and screamed, distraught, but the two quickly spat, disgusted by what had happened. Remorseful, the priest couldn't believe that it had been his first kiss, while the tired knight commented that His Majesty showed compassion and suggested that he should simply leave. He then demanded that the protagonist leave the capital. At that moment, the young man had an idea and asked the princess if she didn't want him to heal her completely before leaving. However, nervous, she blushed and exclaimed that he was an idiot and should step away. Nevertheless, while preparing the horses, she mentioned that there was no problem and kindly bid farewell to the healer, who watched her in silence. With a beautiful smile, the princess remarked that he was a foolish priest. Finally, the army withdrew with the marshal and the blonde, but Jin Song only observed, somewhat irritated. On the other hand, the sovereign Diana was mobilizing, and looking at the ruins of the empire, she commented to Chelton that she felt someone was plotting something evil against the empire. She asked the blue-haired knight to help her discover what was happening, but the marshal insisted that her safety was the priority. Therefore, he ordered the Rose Knights to take care of Goza's protection and mobilized his personal guard. The young woman, surprised, said that it wasn't necessary, but the Machiavellian marshal approached and reminded her that a blood moon had taken the form of her personal guard, and besides the invasion of the royal prison, no part of the capital was safe. He asked Her Majesty to please proceed with the marriage so he could protect her by her side, but Diana responded that she would think about it. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the protagonist reflected on how strange it was to be able to use his beast strike technique in the game. Walking aimlessly, he realized that the characters controlled by PCs had gained consciousness. Holding Tammy's tear, he realized that with it, he had managed to heal the Empress of the Caesar Empire, who, according to the story, should have perished. With the legendary item in hand and looking up at the sky, he understood that the Caesar Empire would not fall and that the 3 ancient kingdoms would not return. Jin Song, pensive, questioned how the game's plot had been rewritten and, full of doubts, began to recall what really happened in the original story. He remembered that after the death of the sovereign Diana, Marshal Chelton, known as the Empire's Sword, declared loyalty to the Temple of Sacred Light without hesitation. The priest, irritated, wanted to know who had caused the attack, but soon realized what was happening and, cursing, ran non-stop in one direction. Later that night, in the capital, the protagonist hid from the Imperial Guards. Observing them, he knew it would be difficult to enter unnoticed, but he recalled that in his former clan, he had managed to enter the city through the sewer pipes, and one of the paths led inside the castle. Finally, the fool walked suspiciously until he found a manhole cover. Looking around to ensure no one saw him, he opened it, releasing a horrible smell. Inside the pipes, he advanced with his weapon illuminating the way. However, as he progressed, he began losing health points due to the unbearable stench of the place, until suddenly, he spotted a familiar climb. Recognizing it, he deduced that it must be the entrance he was looking for. Then, he saw two friendly maids who greeted him, as well as two others who mentioned the name of the maid Lucia. Letting him pass, he saw the silhouette of a large woman on a red carpet. It was the voluptuous leader of the maids, who informed him that the Duke had ordered that from now on, no one should serve Her Majesty due to martial law to protect her, and added that they should all return to their quarters and not wander around the castle. The girls understood the order and accepted it without problems. After some time, someone turned the key to a shower. It was the prominent leader who began bathing. It was observed how she was completely soaked, washing herself while relaxing, until suddenly she heard a sound beneath her feet. She deduced that it was time to exterminate the rats from the pipes again. Meanwhile, below, Jin Sang didn't understand why everything began to feel so wet and hot, and upon realizing that he had reached the entrance, he knew he had finally found it. He quickly launched himself out, but upon looking around, he became nervous, realizing he was not alone. Above him was the voluptuous maid, who, wearing glasses, looked at him with disdain. She screams at the cheeky young man, who doesn't understand where the girl got a weapon from, and seeing the woman ready, he yells that the imperial castle is no place to satisfy her filthy desires. But, looking at him more carefully, the woman notices that he is not just a mere pervert. Jin Sang, on high alert, says it was an accident and asks if she would believe that he's doing it for the sake of Her Majesty. However, the maid exclaims that she's had enough of nonsense and quickly unleashes her deadly skill, the Ice Storm, whose spikes advance more and more. The girl clarifies that her ice spikes are transparent, especially amid all that steam. Finally, with the spikes already at the priest's face, the woman is confident he won't be able to dodge them. However, the attack only passes through an after image of the healer, leaving the maid surprised, not understanding what just happened. Unknowingly, behind her is the protagonist, Sirius, who quickly grabs her wrist and twists her arms, leaving the girl wrapped in a towel, unable to do anything. Sliding into another move, he manages to subdue the prominent woman, commenting that this is his normal grappling skill. At this moment, Jin Sang, confused, wants to know what happened behind him, and upon seeing him, the woman insults him. Showing all her scars, the maid screams for him not to dare look at them. With no other option, the girl grabs an ice spike and prepares for what she's about to do. She swings her arm forcefully to strike the protagonist, but ends up dislocating a bone and impacts the target hard. However, all of this is blocked by Jin Sang, who can't believe what just happened, until, without warning, the bathroom door opens and 4 other prominent maids enter, happy to be going for a bath. Chatting, the more voluptuous ones comment that Mistress Lucia rejected a man, and they think she doesn't like men. However, suddenly, the youngest maid notices something, and the older ones, blushing, think something incredible is happening, as they see their Mistress Lucia in a suggestive position with a man in the bath. They murmur that they were wrong, as it seems the mistress has finally found the ideal man. However, the beautiful subdued maid screams at those fools that she's being attacked. The priest, hearing this, asks them to please calm down, but quickly reacts as, behind them, the sadistic beauties prepare a lethal attack against the young man, who, impressed, immediately jumps to dodge a huge, spiked mace. He also instantly avoids a sword strike from the brown-haired girl and dodges another strong attack from the blue-haired one. Finally, he backs off, thinking he needs to clarify this whole misunderstanding, as the 4 warriors, still in towels, are preparing their enormous weapons. The protagonist then raises his hands, saying he surrenders, which leaves the 4 girls confused. With nothing to lose, Jin Sang informs them that Chelton is a traitor to the Empire, as he planned the entire attack that happened today, and that, in fact, he only came there to save the Empress. This is overheard by the bespectacled mistress on the floor, while the others look on and ask who the hell he is. But, without letting him speak, they all start laughing, as they find it impossible that the most loyal subject, one of the 7 marshals, and the future husband of the sovereign, could be a traitor. Jin Sang knows it will be hard to convince them, as this man has contributed much to the empire. Finally, the 4 warriors approach to take the healer to hell. But at that moment, someone yells for them to stop immediately. The huge woman stands up and declares to everyone that the man is right. The young man listens intently, while the others are left speechless. As she rises, the bespectacled mistress affirms that it's true. Chelton betrayed the Empire. In a moment of disbelief, one of the companions recalls that the Duke was a hero in the battles against the orcs and questions why a great man would do something like this. Without more secrets, Mistress Lucia reveals that she is an accomplice of Chelton. The girls fall silent, only uttering his name, and the tension in the air becomes palpable. Irritated, the bespectacled mistress remembers a significant moment in her life when she wandered wounded among the fallen bodies on the ground. Amidst the despair, a person offered her food, bringing her to tears of gratitude. Over time, she became a warrior of the Empire, and the scene shifts to a ball bouncing across the green ground, while a beautiful maid runs after a little empress who plays carefree. When the ball is finally caught, the bespectacled woman, exhausted, receives the object kindly from the little one, who smiles happily. Back in the present, the woman recounts that a few months ago, Chelton gave a terrible order to end Her Majesty's life during her coronation. Trembling, she admits she didn't have the courage to carry out this order. The healer asks why she couldn't, and with a furious look, the maid recalls that the great empire of Caesar was founded on military power, and that the imperial family inherited Caesar's robust body, which made them remarkable warriors. However, the current majesty was an exception. She reveals that the empress's mother, who was a concubine, fell ill after giving birth, and she, as the mistress, took care of the girl from a young age. When she saw a mage use healing powers, she realized that the sovereign had been at death's door since birth, her health always fragile, though she had managed to revive her. Because of this, Her Majesty was doomed never to become a warrior due to her delicate body. This led to the disdain everyone in the palace felt for her, especially her father, Emperor Caesar I, who ignored her. The girl, head down, heard her father say that she was nothing but worthless trash, devastating her innocent spirit. Her brothers looked down on her, accusing her of being a disgrace to the family.